Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. In this video, I'm joined by John Hart, formerly of Games Workshop Spain, head of retail, marketing, a Golden Demon winner, and now he runs the biggest Warhammer the Old World Facebook group, 54,000 members and counting, and has just launched a podcast.
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Baron of Dice, premium wargaming dice. Over 500 styles, over 4,000 customer reviews. Welcome to the best dice on the planet.
Well, thank you very much, John, for joining us on the channel. We've been talking about this a little while, having a little bit of a chat and a bit of a natter about Warhammer. But before we kind of get talking about what you're up to at the moment, do you want to give us a little bit of a background into your hobby, how you got started and how you got to doing what you do now?
Yeah, well, thank you. Thrilled to bits to be here, to be honest. And I will go into a bit about how I got into all of this and Warhammer. It might not be a little bit, it might go on a while because it's quite a long story. I started like many people in the 80s. I was well into sort of fantasy archetypes, stories, drawings, pictures, any books I could pick up. And my dad was well into building model ships and railways and Tamiya tanks and stuff like that. So I kind of grew up in an environment where you could sort of smell poly cement on the air, and he was always like steaming planks to build big galleons, and he had great ideas and built some really amazing kits. So from a very early age, I was kind of introduced to Humbrol paints and some pretty serious kits, model airplanes a lot as well. And then I got into all of this fantasy stuff through the fighting fantasy books. If you remember the Warlock of Firetop Mountain and these kind of choose your own adventures by Sir Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson, these cool books. And we got a few on sort of like car boot sales and second hand, and I just started collecting them up. And I was really into them until I discovered White Dwarf. I just happened to be in a supermarket. My mum had sent me down to buy some eggs and some milk with a couple of pounds, and I came back with a White Dwarf magazine, and it was a really cool issue. It was it had Keller's Keep from Hero Quest on the front, this dwarf fighting against the gargoyle and the orcs and goblins. Super evocative Les Edwards artwork, and I opened it, looked through it in the Spar shop, and found the Space Orcs in there and some other bits and bobs. I was completely hooked. So I went home with that, and she sent me back to get some eggs and milk afterwards. But she let me keep the magazine, which is just as well, really. So that got me into it. And there were some mates at school who I discovered were painting Blood Bowl miniatures. Started playing a little Blood Bowl league with some school friends on the old polystyrene pitch edition of Blood Bowl. So we're talking, right back in the 80s. So I was about 11 or 12. Mm-hmm. And then I sort of carried on with it through my youth and then into kind of university years. And when I moved from my village up into the big city to go to university, I went to the local Games Workshop shop and I asked them if they had any work going. And it just so happened they had a position like for part-time sales assistant, a key timer, to go in and do some box opening on a weekend and put the order away and show some kids how to intro game kids and show them how to paint and stuff. So I got into Games Workshop when I was very young. I was 19, and I started working in Southampton with Rob Davis, who's still there now. Amazing guy, a really good friend. He was my boss for a while, and then we just developed from there. Really, just went up into Games Workshop management. I mean, I was asked if I wanted to become a store manager. They recognized some potential in me. I went on the management program and eventually managed my way through quite a lot of stores on the south coast, Winchester, Bournemouth, Portsmouth, and then got promoted to run a few more shops. And then eventually I was regional manager for the southwest of England, running a quarter of GW's retail stores. So a lot of good contacts, a lot of good mates were made in those years. Many of them are still at Games Workshop now, which is great. And I met a Spanish girl when I was at university, and we were engaged to be married. Then we got married, and she lived with me in the UK for, I think it was 7 years. And eventually she said, look, we had our first daughter, and she said, I want to go back to Spain to live. It's far better to raise children on the island, the Lyric Islands. It's very beautiful here. So there wasn't really much of a conversation or decision to make. We just kind of moved. So I came here. I call it the Island of Fire because when the Phoenicians first discovered it, it was on fire apparently. So they call it the Island of Fire, which is great, and it's very hot. So I've been here for 22 years. Just after coming here, I set up a little trade account, a little friendly local game store, because that's kind of what I knew. I'd been in Games Workshop by then for 8 years, so I knew what I was doing. I set it up with primarily Games Workshop stuff. I did have some Magic cards, but most of it was GW, and there was a very, very small nucleus of hobbyists who had been buying stuff from a very small trade account on the island, and they were into Lord of the Rings and a little bit Warhammer, a little bit of 40k. So I opened a shop just specializing in this, and those guys were blown away. They were all 12 or 13, maybe 14-year-old kids. Now they've become my gaming group of mates. We play Warhammer the Old World pretty much every week. They're all in their 30s now, which is great to see. Some of them have kids themselves. So, there's just a lot of hobby happening around me. I kind of generate it, and where it doesn't matter where I am, I kind of generate a whole load of like a hobby aura comes off of me, and all these guys are collecting and painting, and they're still into it now, which is amazing. So I had a little trade account, and it was doing really, really well. It was making loads of money, and it was selling well, and we had lots of kids all the time coming in, and I was teaching them to build Viking longships, or I was teaching them to build scenery in hills and trees and woods and forests, and we had loads of stuff going on all the time, and a bit of a league and campaigns and stuff like that. And Games Workshop, because through my contacts at Games Workshop, when I left the UK, I did ask if there was going to be any positions available for me in the Spanish business, and at the time they said there wasn't, but they would keep me on record. So it was hot. It was the summer. I remember I was in a pair of board shorts. I was just cleaning my flat, and my messenger pinged off, and I went and checked it. And it was Mark Wells, and he was saying, it would be really nice to come and visit you in Spain this year. And I thought, that's really strange. I better put some trousers on, is what I thought the first thing. And I answered him. I said, yeah, whenever you like, you just let me know. And he answered back again. He said, I'll be there next Tuesday. So the call came in. I felt a bit like, I don't know, in the movie Commando, when Arnold Schwarzenegger's at the top of a mountain cutting trees down, he's just retired from active service, and they come in a helicopter. It was a bit like that. He turned up with Jordi Suedas, who was in charge of the Spanish business. They came in an airplane from Barcelona, and I met them at the airport. I took them to my little shop. I showed them what was going on. They took a lot of notes. They asked a lot of questions. We went down to another town on the island for dinner, and we were sitting down eating this soup. And he said, we'd like you to come back to Games Workshop. So it was very much a return to action kind of thing. I'd been out of the business for about 21 months, nearly 2 years. And I went back in as head of retail for the Spanish business. So I went back over to Spain. I was living on the island with my wife and my first daughter, and traveling every week from the island to Barcelona. It's about half an hour. And I did that for 8 years. In that period of time, my second daughter was born. I was 4 years as head of retail. So we had all the Spanish stores, lots of visits, store openings, store closings, loads of stuff went on there. And then 4 years in, I moved across to sales support marketing. So I was the head of marketing for the Spanish business, and that opened up a whole load of extra projects and things for me. In that period of time, my second daughter was born, we moved house, and there was a lot of stuff going on there as well. But all the way through it, I mean, I just had that passion for hobby and Games Workshop, and I was always, that was the driving force. And although I was working for the company and everything, the driving force for me was the imagery and the hobby and all of the gaming and playing and the contact with the community and the clubs, and I got all of that through the sales support role as well, which was great. So really enjoyed that. And parted ways with Games Workshop in 2012. There was a big change, a lot of redundancies happened, and I was one of the people who was out of the business for that at that time. And a lot of stuff has happened since then. I got divorced. I decided to stay here in the island because my kids needed to have their dad around, so I've stayed on here. And recently I really got back into Warhammer again. We can talk about all of that stuff and how that all happened and what's going on with me right now and how it's all changed over the last few years. So, there were some tough years, and like I say, the hobby got me through a lot of stuff. So quite happy with where I am right now. I'm in a good place with it.
That's good. The hobby seems to have this amazing ability of helping us all through difficult times, as well as good times as well, but difficult times. But the very last interview on this channel was with someone who uses the hobby in that way, and it's helped them many times. But the whole interview was this kind of journey that the hobby was always there as a bit of a support. So it's really interesting to hear someone else say it's how positive the hobby could be. I mean, when you were just thinking about all the stuff you did there. So when you were head of retail in Spain, I mean, I can imagine there's incredibly busy. I have a bit of a retail past, not Games Workshop, but I know what it's like when you're traveling around to different sites, different stores and things. But were you able to sort of still kind of keep happy with the hobby during that time and get your own hobby done, or were you just sort of so blown out by it by the time you got back home?
Oh
It's
yeah.
like,
Yeah, I mean, I would go in the morning, probably about 7-ish, to get into the office, decent time to get started on everything. And I would travel in the week as well. There was sometimes I would arrive in Barcelona airport and just get another flight to the south of Spain or to the north. So because I had all the retail stores for 4 years, I was going between them a lot, traveling, visiting.
mm,
But I always, 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 yes, I always found time for hobby. I had a flat in the center of Barcelona,
mhm.
and in that flat, I built up so many miniatures. I mean, I think about it sometimes. I was talking to a friend the other day about this. It's like, how many miniatures have I painted over a lifetime of this? It's been like 40 years, more or less. And I painted so many of them in Barcelona. We would do loads of stuff for Games Day, for example. I remember painting like 100 bloodletters for a game where they were just taking on Angron. There was somebody had converted an Angron because it was back then, it wasn't a miniature. They converted one. There was 100 bloodletters to paint. And I was like, well, we'll just do it today. And everyone was like, what do you mean we'll do it today? And I was like, well, we'll just paint them today. So I had everyone in the office painting bloodletters, the girls from the admin team, like the trade sales guys, everyone. I was like, what are you doing? Oh, I was just going for a coffee. Sit down, paint some eyes. I was like bringing people in, get them sat around, paint these tongues purple. We did that. We did a project where we had 60 Realm of Battle gaming boards turned up because I absolutely wanted our tournament to be the best. I wanted it to be all Games Workshop gaming boards and all Games Workshop terrain, and that was an amazing project. We had the whole office, my colleagues and I, we organised everybody to painting with sponges. So we had some doing brown, some doing like the vomit brown color, some doing the flock, and other people with a bit of grey on bath sponges. And I went to a supermarket with one of the guys and just said, "We'll have all the bath sponges you have." So they they gave us like 60 sponges. It was great. So my own personal hobby didn't suffer. In fact, I would get some pre-release miniatures through either through when I was retail or when I was in marketing, get some pre-release miniatures, paint them up, and around the country. They would go to events, and also I would sit down at night and I would be painting my own. I was painting Size of the Emperor Space Marine, so painting black and yellow Marines, bringing them into the office, showing the guys, putting them in the cabinets, inspiring the people to do their stuff, creating little mini competitions. Getting everybody involved with painting and gaming and sticking things together. Like I say, it's a kind of hobby aura which just comes off me all the time, and the people around me were always doing stuff and motivated as well. We'd play in the office, and I did build a really big Skaven army when I was in Barcelona as well. Everything that ever existed for Skaven, I had it. It was all there on my shelf. I can always see it now, looking back in
Amazing.
time.
I
Yeah, yeah,
suppose if you've got a second flat away from your family because you're there for work, you do have a bit more envy, a bit more hobby time in the evenings that you may have not have done if you were at home looking at with the
absolutely.
kids
Yeah,
and things. So
yeah, yeah,
kind of full
totally.
enforced hobby time. So you
Yeah,
get the benefits of it.
yeah. I'm a bit of a night owl as well, so I would get home late at night and I'd probably have some dinner and then just sit and paint or sit and build stuff quite late at night. So I probably didn't have much sleep while I was in Barcelona. It wasn't for the reasons people would have thought, to be out and about, discos and stuff. I didn't do any of that. I basically spent my time in my flat building and painting Warhammer stuff, which was good.
Rock and roll. That's rock and roll.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you mentioned Games Day a bit. You were involved with, is it Games Day Spain you were involved working
Yes.
with? Yeah. So do you want to
Yeah,
talk a
yeah,
little bit about that? That sounds quite interesting. Right? What
absolutely.
went into that?
Yeah, Games Day Spain is there was a really big project, just as any other Games Day. You kind of start. building the next games day just before the one you're doing is finished, you know. So you take in all of the stuff you know about this games day and you apply it to the next games day. Um, I got involved with Spanish Games Day when I was head of retail, but at that time I wasn't organizing the event at that time. I on the first one when I was working there, I went over to Forge World and I worked with them for the day on sales, and that was great because I could speak Spanish and English, and I was obviously working between all of the people on the Forge World team who were really great guys, who were really good friends of mine, and then obviously translating a lot of stuff so that they could make better sales and give better advice to the clients. And that was a super busy day because like loads and loads of clients all day, and a bum bag full of money, just literally just brushed off my feet. So that was the first one, and then after that, the next year I was still in retail. I helped out with the judging on the Golden Demon because I'm a painter and more before I'm a gamer, I'm a painter and a collector. So they would use me to help with the judging. And we had guests that year. Alan Merritt was over for guests, and he became like head judge because of his acumen and his experience. And I was helping out with the selection of that. And then when I became well, that there was the 2008, which is an interesting year. So it's 2008 Golden Demon in Spain. It was decided the level of the Spanish business, not the level of the whole business, that there could be a staff thing, which wasn't the open category. It was like its own category of staff. So I could enter. It was the first time I'd been able to enter. I started Games Workshop in 1996. I entered one miniature before I ever, started in Games Workshop. It was in the Truro store many, many, many years ago when the stores did the first cut. It was like a Chaos Warrior. So I entered that, and that didn't really get anywhere. Then when I had my trade account, I could enter because I was out of Games Workshop, and I got a finalist pin for a Cornate Shaggoth that I converted. So I got a finalist pin there. And then when I was in Games Workshop in 2008, that staff competition, that staff category was open. So I entered an Empire General, and I painted his whole cloak as freehand. And it was all done as the 6th edition Warhammer rulebook cover, which is like this
Oh, wow.
tapestry carved orcs and humans, yeah. And
Hopefully there's a picture on the screen now if
yeah,
you're able to
yes.
send it. I'll pop that up so everyone knows what you're describing, which I haven't seen yet, or maybe I
Oh
haven't
wow.
and not
Okay.
equated it to you. Or maybe it'll be something I've seen
Yeah.
before, but sounds
Yeah,
incredible.
2008. Yeah, that was the whole. My friend Miller said to me, "You can't." He said, "I bet you can't paint that on that cloak." And I was like, "Hold my beer." So I did it because I was told that I couldn't. So and that challenged me. So I painted that whole freehand. It was awesome, and I entered that in Golden Demon and got bronze. Um, and then after that, I was into marketing, so that the whole organized games day fell on my shoulders. So I was like the games day organizer for Spain, and I first year I took a lot of help from Brian Addison, who'd been organizing games day in the UK for years. A good friend of mine. He gave me some really good advice. He came to visit us and gave us some advice. So I learned a load of things organizing games day. Organize an event for that many people at that level is pretty awesome, and there's a lot of work that goes behind it, and everybody in the office was involved. I mean, every single person, they had a role at games day and they were all helping out. So it was thanks to those guys and their hard work. I was there to give direction, to ask a lot of questions, to make sure things went smoothly on the day, make sure we had a painting competition, enough cabinets, and all of those things that go alongside a games day. And I have many, many stories from those games days. And we did them we were trying to move it around, so it wasn't always in the same place in Barcelona. I moved it to Madrid, which was a first as well. And I did 3 of them as head of marketing, and then the 4th one, I'd organised it and worked really hard on it, and then the redundancies happened, and I left the business. So I left the business in May. I believe the games day was in September. So I had time to paint an entry for the competition. So I decided that I would return to Games Workshop Spain as a client, as a games day, as a Golden Demon entrant, and I entered Golden Demon in 2012. So just after having lost the job, I went back over and I saw all the guys again. I I entered a Warhammer unit. They were probably on the screen here right now. They're a unit of Thunderwolf cavalry, but converted, so they're being ridden by Middenheimers.
Oh
So they're
wow.
kind of, yeah, bearded Northmen of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Empire riding on these Thunderwolves. In my head, they kind of counted as Griffin, demigriff riders.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
Makes
yeah,
sense.
no, so I could play with them as well, and converted them all out of Marauder horsemen, Pistoliers, different parts from Mordheim, the Middenheimers, any hairy heads I could find, flagellants, Chaos Warrior hammers, anything I could find, I stuck on them, and they came out really well. I was very pleased with them, and they got a silver demon in the 2012 competition in the unit category. Yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool.
So apart from organising it, I also managed to get an entry in, a couple of entries in. That was the how I got them in as well. So
It sounds like one minor benefit for being made redundant. Meant you could go and get that silver demon. If you're going to look at
yes,
the silver lining, you got a silver demon from it. But it
absolutely.
must have been difficult otherwise.
It was
So
difficult. Yeah, it was difficult to walk back in after that. But I think I'm very glad that I had the strength of character to do it and
hmm,
uh, to go back. And sometimes when these things happen, you're upset about things. I didn't want to be angry at the world, and I wanted to go back and face it all. And David, who had taken over from my position, had organised a very very good games day. Everything was very slick, and I knew he would because he's amazing. So he'd done a great job on the games day, and I was glad that it was him that took over and he was doing it.
yeah.
Great. It was great to see it all working. It was great to catch up with all the people as well because I did miss them. It was like for me, Games Workshop was like a big family.
Hmm.
So, I missed everybody, so it was really nice to go back
Yeah, I
and to
get
walk away with some silver. Yeah, it was good.
even better. Even better. I get that impression that I've got friends that work at different places in the head office as well, and they're all so happy. I know things aren't perfect as well with games, but like there isn't with any company, but it must be really difficult where your passion and your hobby is so strongly linked to your job. And for me, I'm self-employed with mine, so there's less chance that there's going to be this horrible moment where will I lose that job, and how does that make me feel about my hobby?
Yeah.
So the fact that you're still so positive about the company and be able to go back straight away is really good. It's good. It's nice to hear that the company's good enough that you don't harbor any huge hate for them that meant when you went
No,
off and did something else.
absolutely. No, it's made of really, really great pieces. The company, lots of really great people, and and for me, it's not just it's not just the products which are amazing for me. It's the way that the worlds are built and the people that are behind it all. And having seen all of that from many years ago and seeing the growth through the 90s and into that kind of golden big area of Games Workshop, big growth, knowing how manufacturing works and seeing how, having been there when they were installing, the 3D printing, or they were doing like big injection molding machines, and seeing the first Land Raiders come off the prints, that
Yeah.
was quite cool. And being given one, someone stuffed a Land Raider in a bag and gave it to me. It was literally just come out of the machine. It was brand new. These things for me are like amazing memories. I went back and straight away turned it into a Chaos Land Raider, stuck spikes all over it. And they had no instructions. This is the kind of stuff. And right back in the day when I started, and you could go in and pick loose metal, and I got induction, and then they explained how the company worked, and then we could go and pick loose metal. And for me, it was like, what's this all about? And I still have some of that lead somewhere, it's still there lining my walls just in case we have a nuclear attack. I'll be safe, plenty of lead around. So yeah, I mean, it was good to go back into it, and I think it it changed something in me. And there's a reason why I'm a self-employed person as well now. I'm self-employed. I'm responsible for my own my own destiny, if you know what I mean. And I'm free.
Yeah. I can understand that. Yes, definitely. So we had a bit of a break from Games Workshop stuff. What was it? What was the first thing that sort of brought you back into the hobby?
Okay, right. Yeah, well, I did have a break. It was a few years actually. I had some difficult personal times, and after my divorce and stuff, I distanced myself from a lot of things that I've connected somehow to that ending. And I was wrong to do that, I think. But at the same time, I did in that period of time concentrate a lot on learning to sketch, learning to draw, doing watercolor paintings. I learned how to tattoo. I learned so many things. I was drawing in bars on napkins with permanent pens. I was leaving my artwork around the city, and people in bars were putting it up behind the bar. Not do anything creative. I always had to do something creative. And then I started getting back into the hobby through contacts, through people. I'm talking a lot to Tommy Saul, who's here visiting me right now. He was a really good, like a light in the darkness, coming back into it again. And when I did come back into it, I feel like Lionel Johnson who'd been asleep under a rock for 10,000 years, and suddenly things had changed. The universe around me had changed a bit, and everything had changed. And I was Another person who helped me get right back into it was Adria, who's one of my gaming buddies. He was a kid when I had my trade account. Now he's a fully grown man, and he was saying to me, we should do this, we should do that. We could do an awesome thing. We could do an awesome thing. And that was about Warhammer. But just before all of that happened, I'd had like a moment, and I'm not sure exactly what sparked it off, but maybe it's because I was just looking through old publications, and I found the Chaos Collector's Guide, and that contains my Night Lord's army, which I painted in 1997. And it's a double spread of my Night Lords, and they're all kind of old Chaos Space Marines, but they've been converted a bit out of Khorne Berserkers and things just to get variants on the bodies. And they had a Demon Prince in there, and it was all cool. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool? Because I'd sold a lot of my stuff, in my lapsed years, I sold a lot of stuff. I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I just did that army again? And I did it, but with new modern miniatures, up to date miniatures. The new Chaos Space Marines are great. Why don't I do that army? And so I got that collector's guide opened up, and I started looking at all the miniatures that I converted in the day, and I started building up all the pieces, and people were sending me pieces. I set up an Instagram account for my own personal hobby stuff and started populating it with people, and they, oh, you're doing that? Well, I'll send you some bits of Kroot, or I'll send you some Chaos Space Marine helmets. Chris Harbour sent me a whole load of stuff, and I was getting it coming in from all different angles, and I thought, well, I've got to do it now. So I built all of the Marines that were in that double page spread, copying them as closely as I could, but using the more up-to-date miniatures, a proper glow-up army. So the whole army is a glow-up. And I started painting that. And then we were getting more and more traffic through the Warhammer, the old World Facebook page, and more growth in that. And I thought, well, actually, I need to lead the way a bit with my hobby as well. So I put my Chaos Space Marines to one side, and I started an Orc and Goblin army. And that was when I had the conversation with my friend Adria. We had a sausage sandwich and a beer and a conversation, and it was all like, let's do the absolute best. Let's do this the best we can. Let's make the most amazing units. Let's paint scenery. Let's get them. Let's do all the things that we wanted to do. Like maybe him, because he was a kid back then, but all the things he wanted to do and he couldn't do when he was a kid. So let's just do all of that and do it really, really well, and make sure we're painting our stuff and we're, motivating each other. So from me and him having that chat, we set up a group, and more like-minded people got drawn in, and now we're just about to start a league in October, November, and December. Or Warhammer: The Old World, proper league. Everybody's painting their stuff, and really looking forward to it. So yeah, I hope that answers what you said. I did go off on tangents. So
no, it's good. It's good. It's good. So it's obviously you touched on the Facebook group, and most people watching this to this point are here for the channel because of Warhammer: The Old World, probably. And if they're on Facebook, they're probably in your group. So it's the largest Facebook group for Warhammer: The Old World. I think it was the first. It's at 54,000 at the moment, I think, on the count today when we're recording. It's pretty big as Facebook groups go. So when did you decide to set that up? How soon was it after the announcement? How did that sort of birth itself?
Okay, well, as much as I'd love to take credit for setting it up, it wasn't me that set it up. It was Stuart Thomas, who was this great, fantastic guy, Stuart, and he was a heavy metal painter. So you might remember him from back.
I thought I recognised the name.
Yeah. He absolutely top guy as a heavy metal painter, and just as a human being in general. And he set it up. And I was a member of the group, and I was posting up pictures in the group, and I was putting up a lot of images of stuff that I'd made over the years, and people were liking it. And I got chatting to him, and he said, he would basically come and invite me along as an admin for the page. And as time went on, it just started growing and growing, because you're right, it was the first one right back in the beginning. Because it wasn't long after he set it up that I joined as a fellow admin. But right back in the beginning, there was a lot of speculation. People were saying it's going to be epic scale, and other people were saying no, it's just going to be a card game, and other people were going no, it'll be something completely random and different to what we've seen before, and no, they couldn't possibly put it in the same scale. A lot of stuff. It'll be on hexagonal bases, or it'll be this, or it'll be that. We had all this, like,
I
you know,
remember it was
all this.
quite spicy at the time, the group. It's
Yeah,
completely
it
different
was.
now. It
Yeah,
was
it was
it was a
very
little bit
spicy.
spicy.
It was very spicy, and we had to deal with all that spice. And I think that was one of the main reasons why Stuart wanted to step away from it. He's still a member of the group, but I don't think he was interested in just sometimes with spiciness. It all comes from passion eventually, doesn't it?
Mm.
But sometimes it can get a little bit heated, and I think he just couldn't hack it. He was like, "No, I don't want anything to do with that." But I can't speak for him. I guess that's kind of where he was. So I happily just took it over, and for a while, I was solo on it, and it was getting bigger and bigger. And as we were getting, and things started to become solid, and we started to get the journals updated, and the information was becoming more and more solid, and it was getting so many people flooding into it, that I decided that I would need a bit of help. So I reached out to Sam Sedgey, who had been a member for a long time and had experience doing this sort of thing in the past with War Machine in the US, and he's got a lot of experience with these things. He's a top guy. So I reached out to Sam and I said, "Look, Sam, I'm going to need some help." And he said, "Delighted to help you, sir." He says, and we got on really, really well right from the outset. It's a bit like Gotrek and Felix, whereas I'm the Felix, he's the Gotrek. He's so we got on really, really well, and we chat a lot, and that led to us setting up our podcast. But I needed him. I needed his help, and he's doing such a great job as the mod on the page. Now it's much easier to run it, and it's growing. Like you said, we just picked over 54,000 people. I'm looking every week. I'm getting between 60 and 100 people asking to come in, maybe a little more. So we vet them a bit and make sure that there's as little nonsense as possible going on the page. And now it's grown to a point where looking at how it works and how we can continue to grow, but actually looking at the wider community and the different creators that are out there and people who are doing channels and because it is a big place. It's a big old group with a lot of voices, and I see it as a kind of 54,000 Warhammer generals. That's a pretty potent war cry. If we're all firing all four cylinders, and people are setting up some really great armies, and they're posting amazing stuff on the page, we're seeing a lot of that. And I take the best of that, and I always ask them, mind if I share this on their Instagram? Because I set up an Instagram for the page as well. That Instagram account is currently on 9,200 and something people. So that's growing really fast as well. And that's all me. Sam doesn't touch that. I just do that, wake up in the morning, check what's been uploaded from all over the world, get some people's collaboration, put some stuff on there. And, then I look on Instagram and I share things that I see that I like, and it's growing really well, that as well. And it's a nice place to go. I've kept every story that every time I post something, I make a story, and then I keep them all in little stories. So if anybody's interested in clicking on any of those little buttons on the stories, it's just like, I see it as this mad good cabinet of
Yeah.
Warhammer, the old world, across the whole world. Everybody's got some really cool stuff, and it's in that cabinet. It's virtual. You can click on it and have a look through all that stuff. It's just a really entertaining thing to do.
It's great. It's nothing but positive. It's just pictures of lovely looking Warhammer. So even if you're just looking for schemes and ideas and inspiration, click on it and away you go. It's pure positivity on a social media platform that's not always like that. And it's great. And the group's really good. I mean, like I mentioned, it was a bit spicy. I think I originally joined it and maybe left after long before the game, before we knew much about it, probably in year one of the speculation. I thought, it's not that friendly. I left, and I went, since I've been back, it's great. And for a group of its size, you do a very good job of dealing with stuff, because I don't see it, if that makes sense. I don't see much of the feels. So there's occasionally big groups you can think, oh, I don't know if I want to post this on there because I might get more clever comments than I do positive comments, and sometimes you just can't be doing. I just no fears with that. And for a group of its size, that it shows that you and Sam are doing a great job of keeping the less well behaved people in check. So
Yeah, well,
congratulations on it. It's good.
take the rough with the smooth. I mean, the 90% of the people on there are there very much like yourself to see really nice Warhammer, to participate, to put things on there, or just sit in the background and enjoy the process of being in that group. And that's great. And there are sometimes people whose passion overtakes their common sense, and they might
Yeah,
say things or act in a way which is inappropriate in the group. And I'm on those people straight away.
yeah,
Yeah, I have a busy life. I work many hours teaching children English. I have my own business, as I said earlier, but I always find time to check everything. And there are good people in there that will report stuff, and then there's a judgment call, isn't there? When you're an admin for a group, you have to make a
yeah,
judgment. Sometimes you think, here I am. Am I just the most, mature man in the room? Or, these guys telling this guy is such and this guy's responding, and it's just getting out of hand. So I need to basically talk to both of them. And I'm quite level with them. It's like, what are you doing? Where do you think you are? Come on, let's just be in a happy place. Yeah, I use my people skills to good effect with them. All the things I've learned over the years, basically, and just my general character is quite good at making peace. So
yeah, yeah. I
people
understand.
don't listen to reason, then it's no real problem to stop them from being there as well. I mean, I have no problem. I would rather have a happy group that's positive and moving in the right direction than a functional one, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
The group I run is much smaller than that, but yeah, I get exactly your approach to it, and it works in most cases. So, I suppose linked to that, you and Sam have started a podcast now, linked to the group. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, it's Warhammer The Old World Community Podcast, and it's on Patreon. It's also on Spotify and all the different places where you can find podcasts. And where did it come from? Well, we've been talking about it for a while. It's been a while, and it was like a little conversation we started up, and we're saying, well, is there any good stuff out there? What are we watching? What are our channels? What are we watching? So we were like having a chat on just on Skype about what our channels were, and mentioned your channel, Jordan Sorcery. I really like Jordan Sorcery. I think it's a great channel. I like your channel, and I like tabletop tactics stuff. And we were talking about that, and he was giving me some from the US as well. And it's like, well, I, no, I see these guys, and I listen to their channel and stuff, and I just want to take part. I just want to be a part of it. I want to be in there and talking about Warhammer as well. I mean, I can talk, and he can talk for hours. So we were just talking along, and I said, we've just been talking for 3 hours about Warhammer. If we'd recorded that, it would have been a really good podcast. And he's like, yeah, you're right, it would have been. So from that, we decided that we would give it a shot, and try it out and see what would happen. And we came up with a plan about what kind of episodes we wanted, all through just great conversation. We wanted to explore the narrative. We wanted to explore the races of the old world. We wanted to explore the hobby side and painting and doing bases and making great scenery. And we wanted to also be able to offer things in the future like campaign packs and cool stuff that we've got in our heads, that we'd like to develop. So he went away and he came back with a commissioned piece of art that he'd got an artist like to paint. It was amazing. All these different Warhammer characters. We have all of those as individuals as well. And I said, they're really great. Why don't we come up with some names for them, and then make them characters? And he's like, yeah, that's a really good idea. And we just bounce off each other. And so we came away with that, and then a logo for it, and started building it up. And we've done quite a few episodes. We've got quite a lot of recorded material, so we've been putting it up since the launch of it. We've been putting up a couple of episodes here and there. I think we're on the third one up now. And every week we make some time to record something. We've got some really good stuff coming up. We did a really deep delve into the Orcs and Goblins, which is my current army project. So we went deep into the Orcs and Goblins, and we talked about every single thing and combinations and things you can use on the battlefield, but also narratives. stuff as well, and all that amazing, great stuff that's all about why orcs are so fun to play with and everything. So, and we're going to go into all those different factions. We also do like a faction overview where we do like a bit of a zoom out on the faction and talk about it more of a distant thing rather than an in-depth. So we're doing those as well. And as we're going forwards, we'll just be producing more stuff, painting guides, and like I said before, campaign packs and ideas for scenarios and all of this stuff. Yeah. So and we also have a hobby episode where we talk about what we're doing.
Yeah.
So Sam explains his progress with his dwarfs, so his Chaos Dwarf army, and I explain a little bit about what I'm working on right now and what's coming down the future. So it's all good. And from there, like I said before, from the page growth of Facebook and Instagram, and also with the podcast, it gives us a platform which we can use to collaborate with people like yourself and people who are out there creating really great stuff for Warhammer. And I just see it as, somebody said a little while ago, and I hadn't heard it before. It's quite nice. It's like if you light a candle with another candle, it doesn't diminish your candle in any way. And it's like, how many Warhammer candles can we have lit? Well, we can have an infinite amount of them lit. So, and that doesn't diminish anybody. It actually just grows. So for me, it's like collaborative and bringing good people together and solidifying a community, and giving it a voice and a platform and something to listen to while you're painting along. And, that's powerful in its own sense. Just like everybody else, I wasn't particularly pleased when the end times came along and all of our lovely beloved old world was wrecked, and be that as it may, I have no issues with the Age of Sigmar. In fact, I could talk about that as well. But I think we keep it on the old world. In a way, it's good that it went so that it could come back in the format that it's in right now. So here we are. We have an old world product, and it's amazing. It's really well done. So it's good that it went away. That it could come back again.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
I would fight for it to stay. And I think this is my stand. This is me fighting for it to stay as much as I can and build a community as strong as possible around Warhammer the Old World, and just link everybody up. So it's almost unthinkable that it could go away again. Do you know what I mean? We get to a stage where there's so many of us and we have such a powerful voice that it can't be taken away again. You never say never, but that's kind of where I go with it.
I agree, and I hope so, because I don't think I can make another video saying that I was glad it went away to come back again. I had enough controversial comments on that one as it was that people didn't watch past the first 30 seconds. But I don't think it would work. I don't think it would work if I had to do it again. But your podcast is I've listened to all three of your main episodes so far, and it's so positive. It's very relaxed and chatty, but it covers, like you've said, all aspects of the hobby. So it's different. It stands out a little bit from some of the others that are out there at the moment, that a little bit more meta and competition focused, which I love as well. Even though I'm a very kind of casual, relaxed, narrative player, I always enjoy the other side. I'm just not very good at the competitive side. My brain doesn't work that way. I daydream and look at pictures and paint models rather than remembering rules. But I think there's something in there for everyone. So if you're watching this, definitely give it a go, because there's rules stuff, but there's also painting stuff and lore stuff, and it's just super positive. Not that kind of slightly angsty, angry at Games Workshop feel you get from some, which is valid for those people that want to do that. But I like my hobby to be a positive thing rather than see from a negative point of view. So it's great. Let's talk about your Orcs and Goblins then. So I think it'll be a really good way of talking about how you approach a project. So Orcs and Goblins are your first main big project for the old world. Why did you choose them, and then how do you plan your project and build it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right to call it a project, and I see it as a project. So many people pick up miniatures and they have like the hobby butterfly syndrome, and I'm sure we all have a bit of it. Well, that's so cool, I'll go over there. Or that's really cool, I'll go over there. And in my experience of many years, I realized that if you want to get something done, you have to do it. That you're going to get discipline. We'll get it done. You can be more or less motivated on any given day. So, maybe in the summer, for example, it was 34 degrees here on the Island of Fire, and you just sweat into your paint. But I managed to keep my discipline up to do a bit of hobby every day. Every day I would sit here and I was building stuff. sticking things together. I might maybe not painted as much, but I was definitely progressing my project. So, my house is actually full of hobby at the moment. It's overwhelming. It's everywhere. So yeah, I did an awful lot of building. Where did the idea of the orcs come from, and why the orcs? Well, back in the fifth edition or fifth edition of Warhammer, I collected quite a large orc and goblin army, off the back of having collected a big Skaven army, and I was always playing with them, and enjoying myself, because these two armies, both orcs and goblins and Skaven, are fun to play with. And I think the orc army is actually the most fun army. I don't go into any battle thinking about anything other than having a laugh. And I think my orcs just follow that. They want to have fun. I played against a guy called Alex, a good mate of mine. He has a Beastman army, just a quick little one. We were on the last turn. I was winning the game. My orcs failed their impetuous test to charge his full-on giant, because I had no shooting attacks. I've been using spells and movement and stuff to get out of his way for the whole battle and throw other things in front of him. But actually, he was right in front of me. And in the last turn of the game, they failed their impetuosity. So they just charged in. I thought, well, it'll just be fun. Just see what happens. And of course, he belly flopped the unit, killed them, and he won the game because of that. But it didn't matter to me. And it never really matters who wins or loses, especially at the stage we're at now, where all my gaming buddies around, we're all playing in such a nice way where we not really bothered about, we play a mean game, but we're not really bothered about who's going to win or lose. It's more about the story, about advancing the narrative. And like I say, I mentioned a second ago, I can play a mean game. I've played in tournaments. I can play at tournament level. I've done that many years, got my trophies and prizes and know how to do it, but it's not what motivates me. What motivates me is the narrative. And this project, this Orc and Goblin project, is just that. It's thinking about all the things. It's thinking about the bases and the movement trays and the unit fillers and the characters. My orcs all have a snotling kind of helper on their base, every single one.
Amazing.
My shaman's got like a little Mickey's called, this little tiny snotling shaman from the old pump wagon. He's like sticking the finger up. He's giving a rude gesture. He's wearing a little wizard's hat, and he's got like painted like Mickey Mouse from Fantasia. So he's little Mickey, a lore familiar. Then I've got Martog, who's the shaman's bodyguard, who carries a great weapon. He's the Forge World resin war boss guy, and he's got a snotling with a two-handed mushroom. He's called Yellow Belly, and he's like this little cowardly mushroom, but wielding snotling on his base. My war boss, Krong of the Dragonback Mountains, Krong the Mighty. He's on his boar. I used the Gorbad Ironclaw miniature charging forwards. And I got a little 3D printed pig to go on his base. And there's a snotling from the Blood Bowl team riding on that pig. So every orc hero has got a snotling kind of aping him. And that goes along with the whole background story that the snotlings are very, very much, they copy the orcs. And the orcs don't even really give them much credit for being there. They give them a kick every so often. So that's kind of one part of the narrative. And then the bases is another really great way of pulling the army together. So when you look at the Night Goblin units that I've got, I went to Green Stuff World and I bought a whole load of little resin mushrooms. So all their bases are like mushrooms everywhere. So like walking through a mushroom forest. My gaming mat has got little mushrooms painted on it, so it all fits. My scenery collection that I'm building right now are all giant mushrooms, so giant mushroom forests. So I was with my mum and we went and we bought at a garden centre. We bought these garden mushrooms, and she was like, "What on earth do you want them for?" I'm going to make some scenery with them. So she's like, "Oh, just do it." I've made a watchtower, and so I need to paint them. I've got a squid cave with mushrooms around it, and they're coming out of the cave with snotling fishing for squigs. So there's all sorts of fun. Loads of really cool stuff. So my battlefield, I've done an orc hut, that's all painted. I've got a goblin shaman's hut, and I've got these mushrooms. But the idea was also to have, in this project, each unit and character would have a piece of scenery associated with it. So when I paint, let me say, like a boar boy pen, like with boars in a pig pen, like that's a nice little bit of scenery. Or the forest goblin spider riders, to do a forest but with spider webs, cobweb forest, and have a bit of a narrative link through the scenery with each of the units. So playing the game would be playing it at home with all these nice little things which spark the imagination around the orcs and goblins, not just playing on a green battlefield with a few trees and an empire house, although that's very valid. And I do that, and often because a lot of my friends have that kind of scenery set up. But I wanted my scenery to always reflect my army. So if I were to do a Chaos Army in the future, my scenery collection would grow alongside my army, and it would be part of the project. And also, I made sure I had all the right base sizes. I ordered in all the bases. I changed a lot of bases. So I was a lot of pulling bases off and sticking new ones on. I wanted them all magnetized, so I magnetized all the bases with the magnetic strips on the movement trays. I want everything on movement trays that needs a movement tray. So again, a lot of time building the movement trays. I sand and base the movement tray edges with little tiny details. So my night goblins have got a fanatic ball and chain like on the base with some blood spats on it, and there's some mushrooms around there as well. And the orcs don't have as many mushrooms, but they have a lot more skulls on their bases. Although the night goblins have a few skulls and the orcs have a few mushrooms, so that it
Yeah, it
balances
all
out.
fits.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
And with the Black Orcs, I've decided to put on their bases a load of discarded weaponry from dwarves, where they've just minced their way through a unit of dwarfs, and there's loads of like dwarf axes and shields all busted up on their bases. So again, that's another element. But they'll have some skulls and they'll have some mushrooms, but just not as many. And so it goes on, you know. So the tufts are all the same color on the bases. I'd use um, forest floor, I call it. I bought a leaf cutting hole punch machine from Green Stuff World. And I went out into the woods and I got a load of leaves and I just punched out leaves from leaves. So my
Yeah.
leaves on the bases are just made of leaves. So
Yes.
it's just really cool. They're
Why
just
not?
little mini leaves. Yeah, yeah. And also I use a mixture of different mixed herbs and stuff. So my bases smell a bit like a pizza shop because they've got oregano in.
Nice.
So basing's
Nice.
just fun. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's all good. It's all good. So that's how I approach the project. And also with the discipline, there are days where I'm less motivated, but I know that I want to do a bit of hobby every day. So I get on and I sit down and I paint. Like last night, I painted the eyes on all the goblins, 20 goblins. I painted all the eyes on. I thought that's enough for today. I'm quite tired. Then, just listen to some music before bed. But another day, I might be even more motivated. So I might decide to paint like 4 or 5 stages or even finish a unit on that day. And that's great. But when I'm tired, I still try to get a bit done. And I treat it
Yeah.
like a project, like any kind of project. If it was a games day, if I was doing games day, I would have to put some work into it every day, any kind of project. And that's what gets my armies finished and painted.
Yeah.
The discipline, the doing of it, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
having
Yes.
having your list. You go, so next for the orcs, as I bought, I think I've built about 6 different orc and goblin armies. There's a nomadic one, there's a troll horde. I've got a load of black orcs, so I can do a Grimgore kind of themed army. And there's kind of night goblin army. I've got a load of them as well. So the next thing I'm going to be painting and building is for my troll horde. So
Nice.
got miniatures already. Just got the last one, the bone grinder giant. So I'm ready to start painting the troll horde, and I'm so looking forward to it. It's going to be loads of fun to do.
Looking forward to seeing what you do with that. That's going to be
Yeah, it'll be a
incredible.
really nice project.
And it's nice when you move up, when you got that first army done, because I've done that this year. I've actually got 2 finished now, but it's nice when you got a couple of armies done that you can go, oh, I
Yeah.
can almost feel like you can relax into the later projects a little bit more because you think, well, I've got one to play now. There's not that kind of, not that it's a rush, but that kind of real drive to get that first 2,000 points, or whatever happens to be done. Now you've got that army done, you can enjoy endlessly adding to it.
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. I played against Theos the other day. He was using Chaos Warriors, and his whole army's mounted. They're all chosen Chaos Knights, and he's got Chaos Knights and mounted barbarians and warhounds, and everything's fast and dangerous and very nasty. And I thought, well, I'll try out some snotlings. I've not tried them before, and people have said they're pretty good. So I put some snotlings on the table, and they almost held his chosen knights.
Amazing.
Yeah, they almost because there was 4 bases of them. If I put 6 bases of them, they would have held him. So he had Cornate chosen knights and a
Right.
Cornate aspiring champion with a demon sword and a battle standard in a chariot, and they all had to charge the Snotlings. And I almost held him, and it was down to the last couple of dice rolls. It was really tense, and everybody was laughing because they were saying, "Oh, he's going to hold you up with Snotlings," and I was aping about, pretending to be a Snotling, and it was just loads of fun. We had loads and loads of fun, and there was a big laugh. Eventually broke through the Snotlings and caused utter mayhem. But then, what do you expect? They're Chaos Chosen Knights of Khorne. They're going to
Yeah.
do it. But I gave it a good shot, and that got me thinking about Snotlings and painting up some Snotlings. So I made a load of Snotling bases, and I even made like a little Snotling dreadnought out of some Snotlings in barrels. And it's like just because your mind just goes into it, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
I just get carried away in the moment. It's probably far too late, and I should be in bed already. But there I go with another idea. I was building one of the mega gargants from Age of Sigmar to represent my bone grinder giant. It was bedtime. It was definitely bedtime, and I was like, I could put like a fence on his base. So I started rummaging around in the fences and hedges box, and I clipped the bit out that I wanted and stuck it on. It looked good, and I was like, yeah, but if I do a fence one side wilderness, and the other side of the fence is going to be the Empire's civilized land. So I'm going to need some cobblestones. So I thought, I've got a bit of cobblestone plastic cards somewhere. So I was hunting for that, and I found it. I think I went to bed that night about 4 a.m. But my bone grinder giant's got really cool, which tells a story.
I like to say I never do things like that, but yeah, I
You
definitely
do.
do. Definitely do. Definitely do. Right, I don't want to keep you too much longer because we've been talking for nearly an hour now. So you want to just remind everyone of where they can find you and anything you've got coming up that you think people should look out for?
Yeah, okay. So you can find us primarily on Facebook. So go in there and look for Warhammer the Old World. It's the biggest one, like you say, it's 54,000 people. So click in there, get through the very, very simple entrance level kind of questions. Make sure you agree to the rules and you're in. And then just have a good fun exploring through everything. Go to Instagram, look up Warhammer the Old World. The icon is a bit of a map, Warhammer the Old World. Get in there's 9,000 other like-minded people, and you'll see loads of really cool stuff every day. And then on Patreon, we are Warhammer the Old World Community Podcast. And that's also, you can get that stuff through Spotify as well. Patrons, there are people that are supporting us. Eventually, we will have lots of things for them, special stuff for them. But most of the stuff we put on there is free. So it's just really great. Go in, click, and listen to two really enthusiastic, experienced Warhammer people talking about Warhammer while you have a bit of a paint or whatever you're deciding to do when you're having your chill out time. And it's just a really nice, like you say, it's a nice vibe. It's a nice thing to talk through and listen to. Some painting. I listened back through them the other day doing some painting, and I thought it's actually really entertaining. I was quite pleased with it. Yeah, that's actually really good. So that's where you can find us.
I'll pop all links in the video description below to all of your things as well. Now, definitely go and listen to the podcast because I've really enjoyed it when I've keeping me company when I've been working this week. So really, really good stuff. So I definitely recommend it. And thank you very much again for your time, John. I'm sure we have you back on the future. You can talk about as things have grown and the future army projects, and maybe talk a little bit more about painting or something. That would be good to have you.
Absolutely,
on some more in-depth painting chat in the future. Would be really good. But thank you so much for your time. It's been a great chat.
Well, thank you again, John, for joining me for the conversation. It was so interesting hearing all those tales about Games Workshop Spain and running that retail business and the marketing side and the games days. It's always really cool to hear behind the scenes, and especially tales from retail. We don't hear those quite as often. So really, really interesting. And a Golden Demon winning painter as well. So I'll definitely get John back on for some painting chat. Maybe he can give me some tips and things to move my painting past the army standard. If you're interested in joining the Facebook group we talked about, there's a link in the video description below. If you're on Facebook and you like Warhammer the Old World and you're still watching at this point, there's a pretty good chance you're already in that group. But if you're not, it's well worth joining. If you want to check out his podcast, the one he does with Sam Sedgwick, I will pop a link to that as well. Probably to their main Patreon, which is where they host it, I think, but it is on Spotify as well, I believe. I'm not sure about Apple Podcasts yet. I couldn't find it myself when I searched it. It's definitely where I want to subscribe, but I've been listening to it for free on the Patreon page anyway, so it's very, very easy to get hold of, and again, well worth the listen. If you'd like to support me further, lots of links as well in that video description, so my affiliate links are there. The sponsor, Baron of Dice, is there as well. That really, really helps me out. Using those shows that people are clicking through the links from my channel, which is super helpful. And if you want to help me more directly, I have a Patreon as well. There's a link to that in the description. I've just started a monthly giveaway. So every month, all my patrons will be entered into the hat and they will win a prize. This month, so in October, it's 3rd edition Bolt Action, brand new hardback edition. It will vary from month to month what the prizes are. I don't even know what they all are. From December onwards, I know what's coming next month. So if you're interested in those and all the other benefits of being a patron, it's a really great way of supporting me and I really appreciate it. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Take care and I'll catch you soon.